If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. It's 7 a.m. on a Tuesday and your phone is already screaming. 18 American cities have reported simultaneous coordinated attacks overnight. Active shooters, bomb threats at major airports and hospitals, contaminated water alerts flooding local emergency broadcasts. The cellular networks are sluggish, routing disrupted. Half the information you're seeing contradicts the other half. By 9 a.m., the emergency broadcast system activates in 3 more cities. National Guard deployments are announced in Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Phoenix, and Atlanta. But here's what nobody's reporting. The psychological weapon launched 6 hours before the first shot was fired. Coordinated narratives flooding every platform, engineered to trigger rage, paralyze decision-making, and crater trust in every institution simultaneously. By the time the kinetic phase began, 40 million Americans were already mentally destabilized. That's PsyWar Nation, the most significant non-kinetic weapon, and we're breaking it wide open tonight. But before we go any further, quick word from tonight's sponsor. On January 5th, the Department of Energy committed $2.7 billion to restore domestic uranium enrichment. It's not politics, that's national security. The U.S. consumes over 50 million pounds of uranium a year and produces less than 1 million. That means we're dependent on foreign suppliers for the fuel that powers our grid and supports our defense systems. Atomic Minerals trades as ATMF in the U.S. and ATOM in Canada. The leadership team includes members behind the $654 million Rough Rider uranium sale to Rio Tinto. They control 4 100% owned uranium projects in the Colorado Plateau, one of America's most productive uranium regions. If you want to learn more, check the link in the description below. Thanks again to Atomic Minerals for sponsoring tonight's episode. Now let's talk about the real enemy. The corporate media narrative warfare machine is the primary weapon. Doesn't launch missiles. It manufactures the psychological conditions that make a population incapable of resisting what comes next. This system operates through algorithmically amplified disinformation, coordinated framing across platforms, and deliberate suppression of counter narratives, all engineered to produce confusion, rage, hopelessness, and fracture. China, Russia, and Iran each feed this machine with foreign influence operations that have been running against American audience for years, confirmed in multiple intelligence assessments. This is what they want, a population so cognitively exhausted, emotionally spent, and tribally divided that when a real coordinated strike hits 25 plus cities, the nation can't unify, can't respond, can't hold the line. They don't need to win the kinetic fight if they've already won the psychological one. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News. It's February 25th, 2026. I'm Chris Heaven, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friends Randy Nance, Jeff MD, and Don Vandergriff. Tonight's episode is PsyWar 2.0, breaking Americans without firing shots, and we're going straight at the invisible war already running against the American mind. Bottom line up front, post 9/11 2.0, complex coordinated terrorist attacks on 25 plus American cities will be preceded and amplified by a psychological warfare campaign, pardon me, already in progress, designed to shatter national will before a single round is fired. Why does it matter? Well, if the population can be broken mentally, the nation can be controlled without firing a shot. And the tactics to do exactly that are actually being deployed right now. So what we're covering is the mechanics of narrative warfare targeting everyday Americans, who's running the operation, and what mentally resilient patriots can do to identify, resist, and counter this invisible assault. So let's jump right into segment number 1, the information battlefield, how the PsyWar war, is already restructuring American society. The psychological fracturing of the American population is not a coming threat. It's an active restructuring of civic behavior where trust in institutions has been engineered downward to the point where unified national response to a coordinated attack becomes nearly impossible. Foreign adversaries, including China, Russia, and Iran, have been documented running influence operations against American audiences at scale, with a 2025 Information Professionals Association white paper confirming the United States has been consistently outspent, outmaneuvered, and outgunned in the information environment. The behavioral consequences measurable: algorithmically amplified hopelessness, manufactured tribal rage, and deliberate suppression of coherent counter-narrative are rewiring how millions of Americans process threat information, making the kinetic phase of 9/11 2.0 exponentially more destructive before the first explosion. So let me bring our panel on stage here. And Don, when I get to you, I'll have you do a proper introduction to our audience. But first question, I'm going straight to you, Jeff. The IPA white paper says America is losing the cognitive warfare fight right now. What does losing actually look like in practical terms for communities across the country?
Well, it disrupts their ability to react and to counter any kind of upheaval, because you get, you've got a group of people who cannot logically discern fact from fiction. And, we see it every day. I hate to say it, in the culture where you see a dude in a dress who says, I'm a woman. And then we're told, yes, he is. And we have to accept, acknowledge, and support that. And when you do stuff like that, it's one of those, who are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? And when that happens, people lose the ability to make rational, observation-based conclusions. You're on mute, Chris. Got to say it.
Oh, dang it.
Got to say it. Yes.
All right. I was saying before I was unmuted that I was going to move us to another stage. So kudos. You won the first salvo of the night. So Randy, coming to you next. When the kinetic phase of 9/11 2.0 hits multiple cities simultaneously, how does a pre-softened population respond differently than a psychologically prepared one?
Well, I think in the most important part would be unity, right? So it's one of the things that this country's always experienced, right? And have had better than anybody else, in fact. But, there have been times throughout our history, and we're in one now, and, we probably won before September 11th, the first one, and you think about how much we united after that first one. But I don't know that we've ever, in my lifetime, that I've seen the separation that I see now. And it's not just, now it's not just like a racial thing where it's black and white. This is a whole lot more than that. And so then when you have the media that, we don't know what they're going to say when this first happens, they may play it off like it's not a big deal, or we're not sure what it is yet. And then we fall into the same thing that Jeff was talking about. Then you'll have some people that won't really believe it's happening, certainly if they're not there in one of those cities. And you'll just see mass confusion, so to speak. And when you don't have any unity, that confusion makes it even worse. So all that just unravels everything. And the next thing you know, you can't even defend yourself. But you also couple that with, as we talked about, I think before we were on the show, the dumbification that we've seen since the 60s, including in the education system. And you look at what TV is today, man, I think with everything that's coming out, no matter where it's coming from, it's more to dumb people down than it is to make people more intelligent of today. And when you look at what's going on in Europe and around here, and even what's going on now in here, this country, it explains why they would want people that aren't quite as intelligent.
So quick question, Randy, have you trademarked dumbification like you trademark Real American? I mean, if we use the word, do we have to send you royalties? So
well, technically I think so, but we're friends, man. And you have me on the show. So, I mean, it's like a barter system, right? We're just trading off here.
So Don, Randy came up with this term, Real Americans. Like, those other people, they're not real Americans. Our people were real Americans. Then he trademarked it, and the son of a bitch charges everybody a royalty fee every time you say real Americans. I probably already owe him something like $1.75 for tonight so far. But Don, I'd like you to introduce yourself to our audience, and then I'll shoot the first question to you.
Thank you, and I'm honored to be here with you guys. I looked at a lot of the videos yesterday and caught up, but what you guys are doing is right in line with what I'm Donald Vandergrift. I'm a 26-year Marine Reserve, Army National Guard, tanker, infantryman, and then became a tank officer for 24 years. And at the same time, I've written 13 books now and 250 articles that deal with maneuver warfare, the generations of war, which is what you guys are directly on. And I'm getting ready to publish a book on how the Democratic Party has mastered fourth and fifth generation warfare. Exactly what Randy and Jeff talked about. I'm retired permanently, and I consult, including my books have been translated by Taiwan and Ukraine, and I consult private firms, police forces, and do a workshop on how to teach without PowerPoint. So glad to be here.
Yes. Hey, Randy. So we're now almost outnumbered by the authors. You and I haven't written any books yet. So,
well, and he's an officer too. He was enlisted first. So, okay, I guess that's kind of cool. But, Don, you're retired by age, buddy. Nothing permanent about your retirement.
There you go. Yep. I've never heard a Marine ever say that they were a former Marine, because they always say once you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. So, Don, I want to ask you, what are the specific behavioral markers that tell you that a community has already been compromised by sustained narrative warfare before any physical attack occurs?
Well, it's either one or two things. It's ignorance and stupidity. And what I always answer questions like that with stories. And I'm talking to my neighbors, as a matter of fact, about survival and storing water in case of breakdown. And they had no idea what I was talking about. So what has occurred to go, support what Randy and Jeff have said, is since the 60s, actually before that, when the Frankfurt School fled Germany when Hitler took power and came to Columbia University, the Frankfurt School is who came up with cultural Marxism, because they were hoping that the revolutions of World War I would overthrow the capitalism, and they came up with a cultural Marxism which would attack the culture of the West, not the economics. And one of their 9 points was to corrupt and infiltrate the institutions that make up the West, particularly the United States, and public education was one of them. So since the 60s, they had a dramatic revolution, but since the 60s, they've been able to dumb down the population, and there's no critical thinking. Let me tell you a quick story. I wrote an article in the book that's coming out soon about how the Democratic Party has mastered fourth and fifth generation warfare. So they shut down the government in September, and they convinced the majority of American people that was a Republican fault, even though it was a Democratic effort to not only fund illegal immigration, which is part of their plan, master plan, to infiltrate terrorist cells here, as well as overwhelm the infrastructure of our communities. But they were also convincing people that it was a shutdown, blaming the Republicans just before the November elections of New Jersey, New York, and Virginia, where I live, unfortunately. So the community, if the community's not ready psychologically, because they don't want to know. Get the common family that I watch around here, 2 government workers or a contractor and a government worker. They're making good money. That's their focus because they've been told that. And they come home, and then they're required by the school system, if they have kids, to get them to events. And by the time they're done, they turn on what do they turn on for 30 minutes, if an hour at night? Mainstream media. And mainstream media has convinced them that conservatives are evil, ICE is arresting innocent Americans, and that right-wing extremism is the biggest threat to the United States. And on top of that, they don't talk about any of the funding of the information warfare that's being done by Iran, China, or Russia through the Democratic Party. So they've made sure that the communities are not prepared because they're not mentally prepared.
Don, you didn't get the memo. We're not allowed to say those things as white men, just so you know.
Okay.
Just in case you didn't get that memo, that's all.
Yeah, I always get in trouble for that. So,
Jeff, coming back to you, we've seen the foreign influence operation infrastructure documented and confirmed. Why hasn't decisive action been taken to dismantle it? And who really benefits from leaving it in place?
Well, Democrats basically benefit from leaving it in place because they have the same objectives, which is to remove America as the leader of the world. And it sounds hyperbole, but it's really not. Democrats hate the fact that America is the one real superpower in the world. And they don't think it's fair. They don't think it's right. They're all for it when they're in charge of it. But when anybody else is in charge of it, they don't like it. And the reason we are is because everything that is the opposite of what they preach. We are the largest or the biggest and the baddest because we have an economy that was built on capitalism. We have a military that is, it is made up of volunteers, people who want to be there. We have an arms industry, which makes the best weapons in the world, and they hate all of that. So yeah, they're not going to dismantle it. It's helping them with their mission.
Yeah, well said. Good job bringing it to a point there. So Randy, you get the last question in segment number 1, and Don, you get the first one in the second segment. If the goal is to make national unification impossible after a coordinated attack, what does the information environment look like in the 48 hours immediately following multiple cities going hot?
Man, it'll be a flood of information and disinformation and misinformation and everything in between. I think they will flood the airways. Certainly, if we know that at some point they plan on, ditching or taking out the electric grid, and if they're going to take down the internet, I think in the first couple of days while that's still going, so everybody knows, there is going to be all kinds of information, just kind of like what we see during the elections periods that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 elections, right? There's so much information. Or let's just take global warming, right? I remember back in, I think 2009, when I'd already had my first 2 amputations and I was in San Antonio. I took some college classes for business since I was just, there rehabbing, and I was there for 9 months at 2 different years, 9 months each year. And I did report on the global warming thing in 2009. And what I determined really was there's so much information about coming from both directions. It's really hard to determine which is the truth. And I think that's the same type of thing we're going to see. Obviously not on just one topic. I don't think it won't be like global warming. There's going to be a lot of mis and disinformation out there to cause more confusion. Because the more confusion you got, the easier it is to take something down. It's why when you are in the military and you close with and to destroy the enemy, you try to destabilize and disorganize and confuse them as fastly as possible, because it's a lot easier to take them down a lot quicker.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So I want to just mention a couple quick things before we move into segment number 2. I want to show you all this if you haven't seen this yet. And I wrote a very, very extensive article for the people who are asking for more details on 9/11 2.0. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? If you go to Survival Dispatch News or just survivaldispatch.news, pardon me, you'll see this article, 9/11 2.0 is taking shape. It's probably the most comprehensive article that we've put out with regards to this topic. And I included a whole bunch of stuff in a couple of appendixes, which I'm trying to get down to show you, that includes specific cities by regions. So the first appendix is from Khalid. So these are mid-tier vulnerabilities. And we list the cities in each of the regions that could be affected. But if you joined us last night, you may have heard me say that we needed to come up with something different as far as naming is concerned, because if the command and control structures in Afghanistan stay in place, that means that 9/11 2.0 will proceed as planned. So you'll have all of these attacks in all of these cities being orchestrated by these command and control centers. But if the command and control centers get knocked out by us hitting Iran this week, and based on the attacks on Afghanistan last week by the Pakistani military, what does that mean? Does not mean the end of 9/11 2.0. 9/11 2.0 is either coordinated chaos, which has command and control, or it's what I'm now calling domestic destruction, because we have a huge list of targets, including the Golden Gate Bridge, that they want to take out. The Iranians, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the whole lot of them. So that article basically leads you down both paths. Has, I got to say, I probably put 30 reference URLs in the footnotes, and gives you the specifics that y'all have been asking for. So check that out on our Substack at survivaldispatch.news. All right, segment number 2, the mechanics of PsyWar. 7 techniques being used against you right now. So classic propaganda techniques, name calling, transfer, card stacking, bandwagon, and manufactured urgency have been supercharged by AI-driven micro-targeting that delivers personalized psychological payloads to individual Americans based on what they've scraped for behavioral and political data, a capability confirmed by the Vanderbilt University revelation of China's Galaxy operation profiling thousands of American public figures. The delivery infrastructure runs through social media algorithms designed to amplify emotionally charged content, meaning that adversary-seeded narratives get distributed by the platforms themselves without requiring any direct action once the initial payload is introduced into the information ecosystem. Understanding the technique behind the emotional charge is the foundational defense. When a trained mind can identify the manipulation structure, the psychological effect collapses, which is why adversaries work hard to ensure this kind of media literacy never reaches mainstream American education. So coming to you first on this one, Don, I'd love to hear your opinion, or actually not just your opinion, because you've written books on this topic. Walk us through what an actual AI-powered personalized influence operation looks like at the individual level. How does it reach someone? What does it trigger? And how does the person not recognize that it's even coming at them?
Well, you see AI-driven memes all the time that look realistic, but the focus is they don't need to get the whole population going crazy with misinformation. And I read that Harvard white paper as well. That was really good that you put on the link. But it has to get a few people that believe the opposite of what's really going on. Just like today, the AI misinformation that is being employed, you get enough of the basement patriots of the Democratic Party to become assassins because they've convinced everyone that Donald Trump is a Hitler. And what did Goebbels say? That if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes believable. So the AI-driven focus is you're looking at the weak-minded, the ones that don't do critical thinking and have already been divided by the message of the Marxists that they're victims and that the society, because it's the imperialist past, has made them victims, and they're going to do something about it. So the AI is focused through mainly social media, but the TV is pretty close. Social media is the main driver because it can go in there and basically show you what you think is a prominent person, and they're saying something that triggers you. So that's their main focus.
Yes, thank you, Don. So I just got a note from somebody asking if we've been running behind. Our small YouTube channel's been kicking ass, and JJ Carroll got a strike on our channel earlier today, and it looks like they've smoked our ability to stream to our Survival Dispatch News channel. So you can catch us if you're married to YouTube, catch us on our regular Survival Dispatch channel. You can catch us on our Substack, our Rumble. Golly, CommieTube is at it hard again. I didn't realize that they'd suspended our ability to stream when he got that strike. But anyway, Okay, moving on to the next one. Jeff, the Golaxy operation was building capability to deliver millions of customized lies to individual Americans. How far along is it, the infrastructure right now? And what does deployment at scale look like? This is the software that's been targeting public figures. And you're on mute. We're now tied.
We're even. Okay. It's not complex really at all, because you think about, your Twitter handle, your Facebook page, your phone number for your texts, or if you're using SMS or your computer or whatever. Once they identify who you are, which isn't hard, they can use AI or any kind of a bot to generate countless messages that target you and people that fit the same profile as you. It's basically, in the old, when it was all just emails, it was spam. Well, now it's junk text. It's, and the thing about the way the text kicked up, it used to be if you sent someone a text and it was garbage text, you had to pay for that. They could come back to you and make you pay for it. Well, now texts are free. So there's no disincentive for blasting. I get texts. Okay, I'm a diehard Republican. I've never voted Democrat in my entire life. I've been a Republican since 1979 when I registered to vote. I got 3 texts today from like the Democrat, Congressional Fund, from Mark Warner, and I'm like, how in the hell did these people get my text, my text number? You have no idea. I don't interact with these people other than when they send me something, I say, stop, leave me alone. So it's easy to do. Especially all you need is a computer. You don't even need AI.
Yeah, true story. So Randy, social media algorithms amplify the adversary payload for free. Is there any realistic way to defend against that without destroying the platform utility that Americans actually value, the value that they do get from some social media platforms, in other words?
Well, are you saying how we'd undo the algorithm?
No. The question is, social media algorithms amplify the adversary payload. In other words, it amplifies what the other people are trying to hit us with. Is there any realistic way to defend against it without destroying the platforms that Americans value?
Well, that's I think that's something, that should have been regulated, apparently. I mean, we don't need a bunch of government regulation, but clearly what we've seen with social media and their algorithms, and I've been saying it for a few years now, right? There's like Facebook. They have all these algorithms to keep the users in line, right? Certainly if you're conservative or you're telling the truth, that seems to be the metric of line of where they decide they're going to do something about it or not. And I think that, one, there's got to be a way that we can hold these CEOs and these executives of all these social media sites, including CommiTube, responsible for their actions and behaviors. You don't get just a write-off to say, hey, we're social media, so if somebody says something bad, we don't get sued for it. But when they're going through and they are calling out certain things, they're shaping that message, I think they should be held accountable. And, I don't think it should have to destroy it. I think what you have to do is you get somebody in there that knows what they're doing, and they get rid of the algorithms we're talking about. Because again, as I was saying, Facebook has all these algorithms to keep the users in line, but there's not one algorithm to protect the user, either from a hacker or any kind of other stuff. And when it comes to AI, I think at some point, and it needs to happen like yesterday, there needs to be some sort of law that says every AI machine has to leave a stamp, kind of like when you get used to car tents didn't have anything. And now when you go get your car tinted, when you get the ones on your driver door and passenger door in the front legalized, they have to put their little sticker in there, right? It's no different. We should, and that's a little different model, but my point is there should be a watermark or there's something that identifies that this is AI. And if they weren't going to use AI for nefarious purposes, the government would have already made that so. They would have made it where if it's AI, it has to tell you up front that this is AI. The fact that they're not doing that tells you that's the whole intent.
Yeah, good point. Really good point on that. So, Don, if you could teach one counter PSYOP skill to every American before 9/11 2.0 hits, what is it, and why does it work against all of the classical manipulation techniques?
If I could teach one skill, I would focus on the leaders learning how to critically think and ask questions. People need to be able to ask questions. They don't ask questions. They're scared to ask questions. So I even teach a portion of my adaptability workshops on how to ask questions, good questions, because we got leaders now that just nod their heads and drive on. And that's what I would focus on, how to critically think. And what I do it with is a lot of problem solving. So I could create. I was working for Numerity's Research, which is a technological research firm, and they took my learning methodology, and we took that methodology and taught how to counter cyber warfare and phishing attacks and all the different things that could happen in cyber warfare. But what we did it with is problem solving games. And we found out, for example, that a lot of corporations and think tanks had no SOP to counter cyber warfare, even though it was already affecting them. So when we went in there and taught these games, we were teaching critical thinking. So that would be my focus.
Critical thinking. That's a novel idea, Don.
Our public school system has destroyed it. It's destroyed it. I mean, we just don't. We have their indoctrination centers now.
Yeah, I would say at least since the 1980s, our public education system has excelled at programming children to memorize, regurgitate, and move on. But there's no critical thinking, like you said, to they just memorize the steps, they get through, and they carry on. Jeff, what role does fear of social exclusion play in keeping people from rejecting manufactured narratives, and how do adversaries deliberately exploit that mechanism? Boy, you should be able to write an entire book on this one. This is about as open-ended as it gets for you to take a run at all of the disinformation people out there, especially on the left.
Yeah, I don't think the show's long enough. They've been using it, especially more in the last 10 years than they did before. You look at, if you call a guy in a dress a guy instead of a trans woman, you get canceled. If you say a 4-year-old cannot decide that he or she is trans, you get canceled. If you're a parent and you say, I don't want the school to trans my child, the state will take your kid away. And child services shows up on your doorstep the next minute. I mean, they are punishing people for being right and being logical. I've said on the show 100 times, be a skeptic. Don't take anything at face value. Do your own research. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Dig deeper. But skeptic has become a dirty word. You're a climate skeptic. No, I'm not. I don't believe climate in global warming or climate change because it doesn't work out. It is historically inaccurate. I am forever, combating these people who say, "Oh, the Earth's sea level is rising." It's like, no, it's not. Look at photos of Plymouth Rock from 100 years ago. It hasn't changed a bit. Ellis Island, it hasn't changed a bit. They throw out facts which cannot be supported. And then when you challenge them, you're a denier or you're a skeptic. Yeah, you're damn right I'm a skeptic because you're a liar.
I love it.
It goes to critical thinking there, Jeff.
Absolutely. You should never take anything at face value. There used to be the thing called new math, and everybody hated it. It was back in the 70s. Because it didn't just teach you that 1 + 1 = 2, it taught you why 1 + 1 = 2. And it was a pain in the ass for parents and for students, but there's something to be said about that. Because all assumptions, the sign of a good scientist is all assumptions must be challenged. It may not take long to prove that the assumption may be right, but you'll never go wrong by challenging assumptions. The worst that will happen is you'll find the assumption was right. The best that happens is you find out the assumption's been wrong and everything based on that assumption is wrong. And so you have the advantage because you know the truth.
Just for the sake of anybody who's new to our podcast, give me your thoughts on the science is settled.
Science is never settled.
But not according to Fauci. Fauci says the science is settled.
Well, Fauci was a hack, a political hack. He wasn't a scientist. Science is never settled because if you look back in time, science was settled that the sun revolves around the earth. Oops, it doesn't. Science was settled that the earth was flat. Oops, it's not. Science was settled that atoms consist of electrons, protons, and neutrons. Oops, we found about 30 other things in there. Science is never settled. You challenge it. You have your best theory to explain things, but people are constantly challenging those things, testing them, and finding out that, oops, that doesn't work. And there's a lot of Newtonian physics which holds up, but when you get into a molecular level and a subatomic level, it doesn't hold up. And that's where quantum physics comes from. So you're constantly evolving, expanding, and growing. Science is never settled. And anyone who tells you it is trying to sell you something.
The first audience poll of the night. If you think we should run a GoFundMe to get Jeff one of these Tactics watches that monitors your heart and your blood pressure, put a one in the live chat, because it's been a while since I've seen Jeff's face turn that red beam before. And I set him up with the science is settled stuff because I knew it would get him going.
In my defense, I was out in the sun today.
Yeah, fair enough. If I had controls over like the color hues and everything on this, I would have had you lit up glowing red. Just saying.
It was 85 degrees today. I was outside working in the yard. It was nice.
Look at the audience. I mean, we've got votes rolling in across, well, I was going to say 8 different platforms. And yeah, everybody says you need the watch. So we're going to get to the watch. All right, let's pivot into segment number 3, the terror PsyWar convergence, how kinetic and cognitive attacks work together. The 2025 terror threat landscape, 2026 terror threat landscape has already demonstrated the pre-attack radicalization pipeline running through social media. The Charlotte ISIS plot, the New Orleans New Year's attack, and the Afghan nationals released under Biden's Operation Allies Welcome, who then attacked National Guard members blocks from the White House, are all downstream products of an information environment deliberately seeded to recruit and embolden domestic attackers. In the 9/11 2.0 scenario targeting 25 plus American cities, the psychological warfare phase is not separate from the kinetic phase. It is the force multiplier designed to prevent coordinated response by flooding emergency communications with contradictory narratives while simultaneously spiking civilian panic and eroding trust in law enforcement and government. The House Homeland Security Committee's December 2025 terror threat snapshot confirmed the threat landscape is evolving fast and becoming more dangerous every single day, with online radicalization supercharging foreign terrorist organizations' reach into American communities without requiring physical infiltration. Randy, you get first crack at this one. And it's your turn for your blood pressure to go up, by the way. The Biden era Afghan national releases have now produced multiple terror attacks and plots. How does that pattern reflect the broader strategy of deliberately weakening the homeland's psychological and physical security simultaneously?
Okay, you said the Biden what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the Biden era Afghan national releases, where they basically,
yep,
it was called Operation Welcome Our Allies or something like that. So we should be welcoming all these people from Afghanistan.
Well, here's the reality, though. We've always allowed people to come in the country. That's, as we all know, this country was built on immigration, not this type of immigration. And when this was intentional, because again, whether it was this plot, this plan that I've talked about, or that we've mentioned and I've pointed out, and other things. So if there wasn't people that were very smart in our own system helping these things go, this wouldn't be happening. But you have to realize if they just go over and, you know, send planes over and just let anybody on that plane, and it doesn't matter who you are, and we don't do any checks. And of course, when they say, oh, well, now that we left and we made this big mess, we have to hurry up and do this. No, that's not true. First of all, they didn't have to debacle the leaving Afghanistan, right? We could have done that in a much better way. And in fact, the Trump administration from 2016, that administration had a solid plan and a way to get everybody out long before they did that, and it wouldn't have turned into this mess. The problem is the Biden administration and the Democrats don't like Trump. So it didn't matter if the plan was good or if there was one, oh, they tossed it right out. And then they just left in the middle of the night, leaving all of our equipment and everything else. And then when you start going back and just taking plane loads of people and bringing them over without vetting those people, that is an intentional act. I don't care how you slice that pie. We have plenty of time, and we could have done it in a better way and got the people out that we actually needed to get out before we pulled out, just like we should have gotten our own civilians out before the military left. We didn't do any of that. And that's not from a dumb mistake. That is intentional, folks, because believe me, these people are not stupid that are running these offices and the people that they're using as consultants. They're highly intelligent. So the only thing you can infer from that is this is an intentional act, because why would you just bring in and all basically military age men? These weren't families. These weren't people that were doctors, attorneys, or people that had jobs. It's not what we're talking about. And again, when you look at that as a whole, and you got to ask yourself, how does that happen? Well, it was intentional, because there's no other explanation that would suffice on how this sort of thing could have happened.
Yeah, it absolutely intentional. This was not by mistake, and it certainly wasn't.
It's been
incompetence.
planned. It's one of their 9 points from the Frankfurt School.
Dive into that a little bit, Don, before I get to the next question.
Well, unvetted immigration is the oldest form of invasion, not military invasion, but immigration. Rome was destroyed. Byzantine was destroyed by immigration, and currently Europe is being destroyed with exception. And that's a combination of the psychological warfare, where people have been convinced that the Democrats in the globalist party hide behind compassion. I wrote an article on Substack in the fall where the sanctuary cities are the Civil War II, because they hide behind compassion when what they really want is a large population of people that are low skilled become dependent and want to assimilate into the American culture. And they can make them dependent on the Democratic Party, get them votes, as well as sow chaos throughout society, divide us, where people get, by misinformation, become wanting to government come save us.
Yeah, true story. True. When I hear Ilhan Omar lecture us on what America is, I want to reach to the screen and pop her head off, literally. It just makes my blood pressure go up, much like Randy and Jeff are at. Let me see if I can get your blood pressure up, Don. In a coordinated 25-city attack scenario, what does the information environment look like in the first 2 hours? Who's going to be pushing what narrative and for what purpose?
They're going to you want to cause people to think they're beat. Okay, so maybe they're, in my opinion, when after I heard you guys last night and read all the articles today, their targets are going to be water treatment plants, and then electrical grids, substations, cell towers. They won't go for hardened places like police stations. They're going to go for soft grids. I drive around here all the time, and there's nobody near none of these places. Some fat security guard at the gate of one of the most modern water treatment sewage plants in the nation in Fairfax County, and there's one guard shack or whatever out there, and they have a high wire or high fence around it. So they're also going to make people believe that they're defeated before they're really defeated. That was learned from the Germans, the Russians. They were the Nazis were masters at propaganda warfare. And today It's the Democratic Party is masters. They have horrible policies, but they're unified and in harmony, or in synchronization, to be more exact, on what the message is. They don't have anybody falling out other than that Fetterman from Pennsylvania, and that might be a ruse. But they're going to convince people in the first few hours, oh, police are getting killed, SWAT teams are getting destroyed, the National Guard is lost, and make people feel defeatist.
Yeah, that makes a total sense, Don. Total sense when you think about it. As you were saying that, I was also thinking of the North Vietnamese, during the Vietnam War. They were pretty proficient at it as well. Good old Hanoi Jane, right? So
they lose the Tet offensive tactically, and America was convinced after that we lost.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing how easily you can disrupt somebody just by telling them believable lies or getting them to believe in the lies. Jeff, social media radicalization has shortened the timeline from first exposure to attack readiness. What does that mean for pre-attack detection and interdiction given current federal counterterrorism posture? And an example would be the New Orleans New Year's bomber last year. They say that he was radicalized inside of 6 weeks online. And I've heard other people, actually Khalid's mentioned it, that there apparently, I haven't come across any, but apparently there's some examples of people being radicalized in as little as 3 weeks.
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder to find them and detect them, find them, figure out what's going on, because police can't go, we just think he's a bad guy, so we're going to arrest him. They've got to build a case, they got to collect data, because activities that are radicalization may not necessarily look like radicalization. They may look like everybody else. He got invited to go to a mosque on Friday. Okay, nothing illegal about that. But then you find out that the person who invited him is a radical imam, and that other people who were there were known or suspected terrorists. And you have to build it from there. It takes time. And when you shorten the recruitment cycle, so to speak, to use a spy parlance, it's very hard to identify and interdict.
Yeah, I mean, 3 weeks is a pretty tight window to try and identify and capture someone.
Well, again, you guys are right. I mean, you got a guy in his basement or a gal, because in my opinion, inside the Democratic Party, the biggest threat is white women, white liberal women that have been programmed through the ages to think, feminism's great, and they're the one, and now they're finding something else to use their compassion for, because they've been convinced not to be mothers. But you have someone that has no job, is dependent on their parents, and they play video games all the time and listen to social media. 3 weeks is, now you can become a hero there, guy, by shooting at the president or something, because he's Hitler. Yeah, 3 weeks would be hard.
What do y'all think they did to James Cook, or whatever that kid's name was? It's exactly what happened. And I would submit 3 weeks is probably, think about it, just like what they both touched on. It depends on where that person is.
Yeah.
And if this, look at 10% of our country that have lost their minds right now.
Oh, yeah.
And you think about it, if they reach out to those people, it might be less than 3 weeks, because they're already halfway there and they haven't even been touched yet.
Yeah, true story. So actually, the next question is for you, Randy. If the PsyWar phase precedes the kinetic phase by days or weeks, can you think of any warning indicators that the psychological preparation campaign for a major attack is already underway?
I would say it probably is, right? And it's probably been for several years, actually. I think it's been going on for quite some time now, at least, and I'm sure before that, but at least since the Summer of Love in 2019. And, you look at how we've tore down law enforcement, how we've tore down capitalism, how we've, hang on a second. I'm sorry, Chris, give me a
no problem. Well, Randy's, I can hear him clicking away in the back. He's got technical difficulties there. I'll come to you, Don, on the next question, then we'll go back to Randy.
Sure.
What is the Christian community's specific role in maintaining social cohesion and clear-headed response during and immediately after a multi-city coordinated terror event amplified by psychological warfare, Don?
It gets along with the theme that we've been talking about the whole evening in your other shows that are brilliant. The cohesion is one of the strongest immeasurable. Actually, you can measure it, but the U.S. military doesn't want to. Cohesion, and that's what the Christian church has been great at, a way to bond and build resiliency and stoicism in people through faith. I mean, my faith is incredibly strong, and I also believe that these two books are the two finest, the Bible and the Constitution, go hand in hand, because the framers built the Constitution off individualism and innovation and responsibility and accountability. So what the church will do is allow, if the leaders of the church have real faith and not the type of faith I call being seen going into the church and out of the church like a lot of politicians do and a lot of senior officers in the military. But the faith really strengthens your resiliency. And if that church is doing, and it's going to be a lot stronger in rural communities because it's one of the social centers. Just like in England recently, I was watching, what's his name? Tommy Robertson interviewed, a great interview about how the English government's taken away the pubs. Because my wife's from Scotland and we go back there. We used to go back there a lot. And the pubs are the center of their cohesion, that and the church. And it used to be the same around here. So it provides a place. Again, if the church is strong and they really help each other and they do things in the act of God and not act of selfishness and to feel good, then it'll provide a resiliency center against these attacks.
Well said, Don. I think we've got Randy back. There he is.
Good, Randy.
All right, Randy, let me back up to your question. So if the PsyWar phase precedes the kinetic phase by days or weeks, what are the warning indicators that the psychological preparation campaign for a major attack is already underway?
Well, I wanted to address first that somebody asked if it was the cat. And I'm just going to say, look up the video of Pinky the cat, right? When they have him on the news and they try to put him on a leash, look up that video. You won't stop laughing. And that's kind of what we had going on here. So, but I did not put the cat on a leash. I'm not that dumb. Believe me, I know cats will not tolerate a leash. Do not do it. Watch the cat Pinky. All right. So the indicators, so I think it's already happening. And what the indicators are is it tearing down the unity and the cohesion in our fabric, right? Those are the indicators, because the weaker we are, the less united we are. When the kinetic tips off, the more confusion, as I explained earlier, and it just makes you for an easier target. It's again, like I said, if you can confuse your enemy, you can just walk right in there and lay them down. That's it. It's that simple. And so the indicators are, you look at how everything that is good is bad, right? I mean, right now, if we just like the strike you got from J.J. Carroll, I know J.J. Carroll, and he probably didn't say anything that wasn't true or that didn't need to be said. So the very fact that he got a strike is because you told the truth. So if the indicators are, if you can't tell the truth, that's a problem, right? And we've seen that certainly since September 11th, the first one, but previous to that, even all the way back to JFK. If there's a time that you couldn't question the narrative, it's because the narrative isn't true. It's just that simple. If the whole media and everybody crushes you for speaking out against the narrative, or like we mentioned earlier, like all Americans used to do, question everything, if that's a problem, that's an indicator. And, then we look at the attack on the church. If you don't have any faith, you are a lot weaker and a much weaker enemy and a much weaker adversary, easier to take down, because faith, as I mentioned, an ounce of faith and you'll be dug in like a tick, and it'll be very hard to get you out of there just because you have that faith. So there's the attack on that, and there's probably 10 others we could go through. But the fact is, I think it's already happening because of how far it's tore down. And guess what? What did it produce? as when we first started talking about this plan, it was only 10 to 15 cities, right? But now, because of the opportunity that's presented by the psychological warfare going on in this country, and I mean, it's on the, we're not talking about just on the daily. You're talking about every minute of the day and night, you're being pounded by this stuff, and it's all lies. So the fact is, now it's 20 to 25 cities because of the opportunity, because they see this insurgency building in the United States. And that is, between the destabilization we see and the insurgency that they're trying to run in this country right now, those tell you the psychological warfare is already well in place and moving.
Yeah, true story. So that's it for the third segment. Before we roll into the fourth segment, I want to show you all something. Our friends at Carnival have completely redone their subscriptions, and this just went live before we went live. Check it out. If you sign up for a subscription at Carnival, you get a free Survival Dispatch News Guardians membership completely for free. And they redid a bunch of the pricing, so you can see 3 levels: off-grid, bug out, SHTF, and it starts at $99 a month. You can't beat it with a stick. So right there, off-grid subscription $99, bug out subscription $149, SHTF subscription $499 for the people who are real preppers and want to stack it up. But I'm going to put a link in the live chat here in just a second. Those are incredible prices. And when you sign up for a Carnival subscription, keep in mind that you get locked in at that price for 12 months. So the 49% that we saw last year in inflation on beef in particular, you will not be subject to that when you sign up for a subscription with Carnival. All right. With that being said, let's get into segment number 4. Who's running the operation? Naming the infrastructure. The corporate media narrative warfare machine operates through a documented public-private fusion of government agencies, university-based censorship consortia, NGO networks, and big tech content moderation infrastructure, like the assholes at CommiTube who nuked our friggin' channel today. A system that former State Department official Mike Benz has documented with receipts showing taxpayer money funding the suppression of American speech while adversary narratives flow freely. The fourth psychological operation group recent recruitment video openly declaring words are weapons and we are everywhere raised direct questions about the targeting of domestic American audiences, underscoring that the PSYOP infrastructure is not just foreign, it has domestic components with real operational reach. Breaking Defense reported in January earlier this year that the U.S. military's most effective counter to disinformation is institutional trust. Yet over half of Americans now get their news from social media platforms that are documented vectors for adversary influence operations, making the trust infrastructure itself a contested battlefield. So I think we're coming back. Oop, wrong one. My apologies. Hold on a second. I'm on the wrong stage. Let me get on the right stage. There we go. Apologies for that. So we're going to come to you on this one, Don. The censorship industrial complex has been documented with federal funding trails, university partnerships, big tech enforcement mechanisms. At what point does this cross from policy dispute into something that needs to be prosecuted?
That's a good question, because I'm waiting for the Trump administration to cut down the George Soros and other billionaire and millionaire sources to these agitator groups. And I'm hearing that they know about it, but where are the actions? So it becomes a point where, so it's the big counter the Democrats have with the First Amendment, their right to protest, but it crosses the line when they physically begin to resist the ICE elements and the CBP and everybody else. So you've got to have a task force that I write in my forthcoming book, because a third of the book is how to counter this stuff. And they've got to have a task force that lays down the foundation of these people, that when they're linked, when they have indoctrinated someone to commit a terror group, it crosses the line. When they paid agitators, it crosses the line. When they are deliberately threatening the security of the United States, and they can come up with measures to do that, it crosses the line. They need to start prosecuting and putting these people in jail. But the more important thing is, no matter what type of generational warfare, everything depends on logistics. So all these corporates and the Democratic Party sources for Antifa and BLM and whoever else they're beginning to create depend on money to be survival. They're not out there forging on their own like a Napoleonic or Civil War army. So they have a money trail, and it has to be cut off. And then a lot of these corporations are also they get tax breaks, they get funding, grants, and they just need to be shut down when we determine that they're crossing the line and violating our national security.
Yeah, I watch how this audience poll goes. If you think that anybody's going to be held accountable for any of this stuff, put a 1 in the live chat and watch what happens. This one's pretty easy to predict with our audience. So, Jeff, the 4th PSYOP group's recruitment video was designed for domestic American audiences. What is the legitimate scope of military psychological operations directed at American citizens, and where's the line?
I don't know the scope. I'm not that familiar with military psyops. I know they've used them overseas. They're very, they do it in every war zone. What they use on or what they deploy against the American public, I honestly don't know. It'd be more like something Randy could answer.
Well, if you want to punt it to Randy, we can do that. Randy, you want to take a swing at that one?
Well, I know what PSYOPs does. It's no different than there's a lot of things PSYOPs does, right? They will drop notes from planes that have messages on them. Same thing we did in World War II with the Japanese before we dropped the bomb. I don't know if that was the PSYOPs that did that, but we did the same thing in Iraq, and I'm sure we did in Iran too, where they dropped messages, but they weren't necessarily warnings that we were about to take the city. You know what I mean? These were messages to shape the thoughts and behaviors of the public. And so they did that. They also went around, they had loudspeakers on, right, that had Arabic, and they were putting out those same type of messages. And to me, not exactly but when you look back at the Germans during World War II, and certainly in Russia, they were constantly, as Don pointed out, they were masters. I think it was Don, either that or Jeff, one of them guys pointed out that they were the masters of PSYOPs, and they really were. And, if you watch in Russia, they would go around and they were constantly playing loudspeakers that told the Russians that, look, comrade, we're not the enemy to you. Basically, they're the enemy to the government, and their government was their own enemy too. So they tried to win people over that way. And I think that our PSYOPs does the same thing. And there are many other things that they do that I'm not going to mention, but they do muddy the water, so to speak. And if they need to put out misinformation to kind of shape how the public feels, that's exactly what they do.
Yeah. So actually, before we move into the next question, Don, I'd like you to pick up where Randy left off there and just add your thoughts on this particular topic.
Both Jeff and Randy their input's been incredible and aligned. Here's the problem with the entire federal government and the military. Now, Pete Hegseth's trying to do some great stuff, and so is the president. And as the leaders, they've got to portray us as the greatest military in the world. And I remember what Jeff started out with, the weapons and so forth we have. But we are still driven by what's called a second generation or industrial age mindset of control and conformity, checklist. I wish I could remember the name of it. Maybe you guys know, but there was a great article a few years ago about Cyber Command and how they need to decentralize because they would discover a way to harm like Iran or someone, or they were tracking something that was going to happen. They had to wait for authority from the general level versus, giving guys a scope, a mission, what's called mission command, Aufsichtstaktik in German, and allow them the latitude to make those decisions. And currently, the current personnel system evolved out of World War II, 1947, and was institutionalized, and it's a very top-down, zero defect system. You're not going to counter all these PSYOPs platforms and so forth, and our PSYOPs is the same way. Cyber Command's the same way. Until we decentralize and empower people to make the decisions, and when they make the mistake of trying to do something right, we understand that.
Yeah, well said, Don. So, Jeff, I'm going to come back to you since you didn't really have a chance to fully answer the last question. If the same infrastructure built to suppress foreign disinformation has been repurposed to police domestic American speech, how does the country unwind that without leaving the legitimate foreign threat vector open?
See, it's really hard to do, because if I'm a foreign player and I want to put disinformation into the U.S. system through social media or whatever, I'm going to make it look like it comes from the United States. It's not going to be from Moscow or Beijing. It's going to look like it's from New York or Los Angeles or Chicago. And you see that with all these, these mouthpiece news sites. And, anybody could put up a news site. I could put up a site and I could call it Jeff.news, and put out stuff and claim to be legit. So they put up these kind of phony sites that throw stuff out there. It's funny, as I was on Facebook and I was just getting inundated with these little pop-ups and not so much ads, but stories about electric cars. I don't like electric cars. I've never owned an electric car. I have no desire to own an electric car beyond a golf cart. And every one of them is from a different source or different host. And it's clear this is all a bot. This is all they're just putting out more and more pro-electric car stuff through, what looks to be 20 different organizations. I can guarantee you it's all the same organization. I don't know which one it is, it's just garbage, but that's what they can do. So the people who are looking at the disinformation are going to have a real hard time. They have to do some real digging to distinguish between a legitimate American having an opinion and a foreign government trying to influence opinion. And by the time they can really get in there and figure it out, the damage is done. They may have been doing their thing for 6 weeks. Who knows?
Yeah, this is an incredibly challenging attack vector to tackle, that's for sure. Randy, the Foreign Malign Influence Center was dissolved under the current Trump administration. Does that create a capability gap that adversaries will exploit, or does it close a domestic overreach problem first, or both?
I really don't know the answer to that. I would probably say both. I think I'm confident if the Trump administration shut it down, just like AID, it probably needed to be. But just like those, right, are no different than what we're looking at in the Middle East and these countries that, now we have different leaders, or when we've toppled a leader, what's happened. And I think that whatever gap we leave, all of our enemies are going to exploit. You can just guarantee that's a fact, right? So no matter what, if there's some sort of gap, our enemies are going to try to exploit that. And there will be people domestically that also try to do. So I would say it's both, although I really honestly don't know the exact answer to that.
Yeah, no worries. It was more in high level, call it esoteric context. So Don, you're welcome to take a run at that if you want. I think the crux of the question is when the Trump admin shut this down, the Foreign Malign Influence Center, they were doing it to protect Americans from the domestic overreach that the Biden installation used against us.
Yeah.
But the argument was that it was put in place to stop foreign adversaries from running these psyops against our citizens. So I guess it's like everything else. First thing you do is decide what you want. Next thing you do is decide what you're willing to give up. What are your thoughts on the Trump admin shutting it down? I'm going to go with Randy on this one. If they shut it down, it probably needed to be shut down, but I'm not an expert in this.
I'm a big, I'm a big small government constitutional conservative, physically sound. The smaller the government, the better. So when they were shutting down USAID and all these other stuff, I was loving it, because large bureaucracies never win wars. The last stage of an empire was when they have large permanent civil servants running everything, and that's why I advocate we need organizations that can counter this stuff, but they've got to be under a different culture than the one we have right now, ran by the GS and SES mafia. That 75 or 80% are left leaning because of the way it just evolves. So if they shut down the center, I have trust in them, but at the same time, we need to restructure and reorganize our entire military to fight these new type of ways of war we're still structured, not much different. If you lined up the chain of command of a Napoleonic army and put it beside the U.S. Army, it's roughly similar. So that's our problem, is structure and culture and how we manage people.
As you were saying that, Don, I was thinking to myself, Mike Sterling likes to say that our military is always fighting the last war.
Well, it's even more than that. They're stuck in what's called a linear warfare. We've designed these great weapons, but if you have a real, my favorite campaign was when we bought, what's his name? When we bombed Serbia, and when we bombed Serbia, the claims were we destroyed all these Serbian army tanks and stuff, and they rolled out of there when the agreement was made, and they had more vehicles than we claimed, because they had a contest, and the contest was who can build the decoys that trigger the biggest American weapons, and they were incredibly adaptive at creating those weapons. So it goes back, we were fighting a highly technical but very centralized, fighting a decentralized force that was empowered to adapt on the ground without a lot of permission. We need to go to that.
Yeah, I can see the validity behind that for sure, Don. So last question goes to you, Jeff, in segment number 4. How does a real American community, TM Randy Nance, that has lost trust in both establishment media and federal institutions build a reliable, adversary-resistant information network from the ground up?
You've got to come up with your own trusted sources, and people need to basically know that, okay, I can trust you, and then you can trust me, and it's kind of how you do it. We're so used to trusting the media, but you got to ask yourself, why should we? The media has lied to us blatantly for years, and they are not in the information dispersal business. They are in the advertising selling business. Informing you is not their objective. It's the TV show that used to sell the Chevy ad. I saw a little quote, a little quip, and it was, I tried to follow the science, but I couldn't. It didn't go anywhere, so I followed the money, and then I found the science.
It's well said.
But that's the media. They are not there to inform. They are there to make a profit, and there's nothing wrong with making a profit. And if you do a bad job informing people, then if all is right in the world, you'll go out of business because people won't listen to you anymore. But Americans are lazy. They don't check anything.
Yep.
They never go, where else? God, did I see that somewhere else? Let me look around, see if anybody else is reporting that. And, you'll see these things, they'll pop up on X. Oh, so-and-so died. And you go, okay, that should be big news. And you can't find it anywhere else. And then eventually that person comes out and goes, still alive. Sorry, not dead. But it's clickbait. How many people will click on that article because they said, "Oh, Joe Blow died. Oh my God, he was my favorite actor," and they'll look it up. He's not dead. But they got a lot of clicks, and that led to monetization, and that led to money.
Well, I think a really good example of that is when it was a Wednesday that Christopher Wray, when he was still head of the FBI, went in front of Congress and said Donald Trump was not shot in Butler, Pennsylvania. Yeah. He was hit with shrapnel from the teleprompter and the handrail beside him. And 48 hours later, the FBI released this little tiny statement that said Christopher Wray spoke out of, turn, and that Donald Trump was in fact shot by a 5.56 round. But the lemmings memorized what Christopher Wray said, and they regurgitated it over and over again. And that's what the Democrats do. That's what the rhinos do as well. They get people to buy into one headline, even though it's overturned, could be quickly, could take a long time. Well, it's like the Fine People hoax, right? Yeah. Anybody who did the investigations, it's easy to find out that Donald Trump never called Nazis fine people.
Well, you look at how many people, oh, Donald Trump is a pedophile. Okay, where's your evidence of that? There is none. You get all of those over and over and over again. And the thing with the media, especially the New York media, like the New York Times, the smear is the headline, and then the retraction is 8 days later on page D17 below the fold in the corner. But now they're not even doing that. What they're doing is going back and they'll post the article online, and then they'll do a stealth edit 2-3 weeks later to change the verbiage, but they'll never tell you they changed the story. They just change it. And all you remember is the original.
You're on mute.
Break. Damn it. Now Randy's got me by one. Jeff and I were tied. Don is in the lead with Randy with no you're on mute strikes. But another audience poll, and I meant to run this in the last segment, so y'all have to dig back into your memory here. But when Randy said something about dug in like an Alabama tick, and I'm paraphrasing, how many of you saw him as Jesse Ventura in The Predator saying dug in like an Alabama tick? Because as Randy was saying that, I'm thinking, all right, here's this Green Beret, and he's in some Central American country fighting the predators, and the bad guys dug in like an Alabama tick. Sorry, Randy. I completely forgot. I saw that movie not long ago, and I completely forgot he was in there until he came. I was like, oh no, there's Ventura. He's completely lost his mind these days. But, back in the day, he was a decent guy. But that's the end of segment number 4. We're getting ready to pivot into segment number 5, but I want to show you all something else. Wasatch Wagyu now have subscriptions, and you can also use the SD25 discount on them. So at $39, $59, or $99 a month, if you use the code SD25, you get 25% off of all of them. I'll put the link in the live chat here in just a minute, but that's an incredible deal. I mean, you can't beat that with a stick. All right, segment number 5, building the psychologically resilient, tongue twister, resilient patriot, your personal counter PsyWar protocol. Psychological resilience against narrative warfare is a trainable, practical skill set, not a passive condition, and the most effective defense identified by researchers across military, intelligence, and behavioral science literature is pre-exposure to manipulation techniques before the high-stress attack environment makes clear thinking nearly impossible. Community embeddedness is a documented force multiplier for cognitive resilience. Isolated individuals are the primary target of narrative warfare because they lack the social feedback mechanisms that allow manipulation to be identified and rejected, which means the preparedness community's emphasis on tribe building is not just physical survival strategy, it's direct counter PsyWar doctrine. Anchoring daily life in scripture, physical readiness, and face-to-face community is not a soft suggestion. It's the structural defense against a weapon system specifically engineered to exploit digital dependency, spiritual rootlessness, and social isolation as the attack vectors for breaking the American national will. So, Randy, you get first crack at this segment. What does a practical, personal counter PsyWar protocol look like for a working American family, a job, and 30 minutes a day? What are the highest leverage habits? Where do they go to get their information beyond survival dispatch news to make sure that they're grounded in reality?
Well, you know what I think about that. And, you know, the reality is there really isn't anywhere you can get good media today. That's a fact. You know, you can get it off social media and off X, you know, and take it with a grain of salt. You definitely have to look into and research. You know, the one of the biggest things you need to look at is, you know, one, who put out the article, and then who's paying that person, right? Because that really matters, because usually who's paying for whatever research, somehow it magically comes out to what they want it to. So that would be a big deal. You need to, you know, but when this thing happens, I don't think anybody's going to have a real chance to do that. If you don't already have some stuff in place and you don't already have some firm beliefs and you know what is right and wrong, you're going to have some real issues here. Because as Don said, and that was what I was alluding to when I said earlier, that there would be so much misinformation and disinformation. They're going to be a straight out lie to you, so they confuse you. And they're definitely going to try to convince us that we already lost. They're definitely, that is a fact, and it will happen when this attack happens or whatever. Because like I said, whether it's this or something else that kicks it off, I think that there's going to be other entities, including people, including organizations and agencies in our own country and our own federal agencies, are going to pile onto this thing, right? And I think whether it's the jihad, the 9/11 2.0, I think they're just waiting for that moment. So if you don't already have a good line of where you're getting information, it isn't going to happen then. It's not going to happen then, and you're going to be panicking anyway. Everybody's watch is going to be going off that day. So you'll have to stop and ask yourself some questions so you can put some blood back in your brain and you can think properly. But again, when it comes to all the information that comes out, man, you know, if you didn't see it, you know, I would definitely look into it as far as you can at that point. Like right now is when they really should start trying to iron that out, because when the attack happens, you're not going to have that kind of time to go real. And, you know, you need to figure out what you're doing instead of trying to figure out where information's coming from.
You just set Don up perfectly. So there's a new word, relatively new word that's going around called pre-bunking instead of debunking. The idea being is that they get the lies out ahead of whatever the thing is. They pre-bunk something that they know is coming from the other
side. We're definitely watching that. We are definitely watching
absolutely. That. So, Don, question for you. Researchers say pre-bunking exposes people to manipulation techniques before they encounter them, and that it's more effective than debunking after the fact. How do we scale that across the preparedness community before the next major attack? In other words, how do we scale to protect our community against this pre-bunking, or is it even possible, Don?
Well, it's like the military came up a couple of centuries or decades ago with the pre-mortem after action review, which is like you do, instead of doing the after action review afterwards, you do what you think you're going to do wrong or can do better beforehand. So the same thing applies here. We really can't trust any of the mainstream media. I mean, I watch Fox and AON and Newsmax every day. We switch back and forth, but I really get a lot. I found it's all about trust. So I watched Nick Ferrates, for example, that's out from Culpeper, who's one of the finest conservatives and truth tellers there is. But I did that pre-bunk because I myself am always asking questions. So we've got to put out the word who is very reliable, who can you go to get your information, and again, teach people to ask questions, constantly ask questions, and constantly like I sent you an email yesterday one of the things that was not mentioned yesterday and needs to be mentioned is not only mental fitness is critical thinking and preparing your mind for resilience, but also physical fitness is perfect for it. You got to be physically fit. I don't in some form. I'm not bad off like he told me, Randy, like what you went through. God bless you, but I'm totally disabled. I can walk, but not very long. But I have found ways to work around that and stay fit. Okay, so it's an adaptation too. We've got to continue to build small communities that have links to trusted larger communities that are built on nonstop critical thinking and adaptation. And that's the only way we're going to build that in communities.
So, Don, I know that you just met Randy, but I would say, what was maybe 10 years ago, Randy, when you decided you were going to do all the Tough Mudders and all that other stuff. He's a Green Beret to the core.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Having a leg amputated did not stop Randy Nance. As a matter of fact, I think it might have motivated him to a certain extent. He's got that smile on his face. So,
well, when I woke up in ICU, the first thing I said was, "I'm going back." Now, unfortunately, I went back. When I went back, it wasn't operational, so I never made it back in uniform as on a team or back where I wanted to go. But that was my mentality from the first time that I woke up, and from what I was told in the hospital there. That's a pretty rare statement.
Not surprised. I don't know if Jeff's still with us or not. His camera's gone black. Can you hear us? Yeah, you're not showing up on screen.
You changed the definition. I had a glitch.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all.
There it is.
Yep.
There it is.
All right. So coming to you, Jeff, with this one, if community cohesion is the primary structural defense against narrative warfare, what are the specific things that destroy community cohesion that adversaries deliberately target, and how do we protect against them?
I think one is like, not to be old school about it, but rumor mongering. They start they throw something out there, and then you get these little old mother hens of the little old guys who just sit there chirp, and they repeat it without verifying it. And so it starts to take off, and it is so easy to do. You just put something sensational out there, and I heard, X, and then everybody, and then, they're all excited because they saw it and they repeat it. And then somebody else who they told, they repeat it, and then they tell people and they repeat it and repeat it. And by the time, it's the old thing, a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on. By the time it is, okay, that turns out to be total nonsense, there are memes and stories and posts and pages. Hell, there may be a damn web page dedicated to it. But those kind of things, people who talk without knowing, rather than say, I heard this, but I don't know if it's true or not. And I hadn't been able to see it anywhere else. If you caveat it properly, you can say, okay, I heard this, haven't been able to find it anywhere else. It may be bullshit. That's one thing, but they don't. They repeat it. I saw it on the internet. It must be true.
Yeah, must be. Absolutely. It's on the interwebs. How could it not be true?
Yeah. It's like,
gentlemen, I've got to run. This has been great. And I'll see you next week.
All right. Take care, Don.
Good to meet you, Don.
Yeah, great to meet you
Don. Yeah, I got to roll out of here soon, too.
Okay.
All right.
God bless you all.
Likewise.
God bless, Donald.
Randy, what does the Christian faith tradition uniquely offer in terms of psychological resilience that secular mental health frameworks do not? And why does that matter in a PsyWar context specifically?
Well, the word is discernment, right? One of the things that faith and spirituality and Christianity brings to you in reading the Bible is wisdom. And, wisdom can help you with discernment. And discernment's going to be very important, because what does that mean? That means you telling whether something's true or not. So you know whether to believe it or follow it or not. So that is, in my opinion, the Christian faith is one of the things that's strong, that one of the things that strongly exercises that muscle, we'll say. where nothing else does. The system you're talking about with psychologists and psychiatrists and all that, there's no spirituality. These people are linear. And so they're not going to build that same kind of faith inside you, right? As we talked about earlier, it's that faith that keeps us strong, that gives us hope and keeps us fighting and keeps us moving on another day. But you have to be able to discern the truth, and you have to be wise enough to do that. And the funny thing, like I said, reading the Bible and becoming knowledgeable about Christianity and what the Bible says and what God's promises are, and the wisdom you get from that, somehow magically increases your discernment.
Yeah.
And I guess I shouldn't have used that word magically, because I don't think God likes magic, but the fact is that's what it produces.
Well, as you were speaking, Randy, I was thinking about Doc Pete's speech that we closed out with last night on the young man who was under his command, who died beside him when their Humvee got hit by an IED, and somehow Doc walked away and the young man didn't. And that young man, every time that they went out on a mission, he would always pray but not loud enough that anybody could hear it. And Doc Pete would ask him, what are you doing? What are you saying? And Doc Pete delivered the news to his mother, who's an only child, of what happened, the whole incident that happened and how it was under his watch. And Doc Pete said, past that point, it didn't matter how hairy something got, because he knew it was all going to work out exactly the way that God intended, even if it seems hard to get your head wrapped around at times. Just interesting perspective, that's all.
Well, funny you say that, and I'm glad you brought up Doc Pete, because I didn't see that part. I watched a thing a couple of days ago that's a famous CAD guy. Now he's retired now, but he was in Black Hawk Down. He was in Mogadishu when that event happened. And what he talked about was his spirituality, right? And how much he believed in God and how scared he got in that moment. Like every one of them, they all did. You're not human if you didn't feel a little fear when all that stuff started happening. You can move through it, and that's what we do. But trust me, there was a moment where that fear strikes you. It does every time. And that's what he said. So he prayed, right? And then he said it just came to him, right? Either today was going to work out and they were going to solve this problem, and he would go home and get to be with his wife and his kids and his family again. And that was great. That's exactly what he wanted. But if somehow he was struck down and killed during this battle, that in the next instant, he would be there with our Father and Jesus. And he said, both of those are desirable outcomes. And I can't lose either way. He said the calmness and the peace that brought over him was significant. And he was able to move throughout the rest of the day like there weren't even people firing bullets, to the point that everybody else noticed. And he says this. He said, these are some bad mofos. These guys really are. And in their own right. He said, but afterwards, every one of them came to me and said, hey, we noticed something different about you yesterday, and I want a part of that. What was it? What did you do? And so he shared the gospel and the word of Jesus with them. And I can only hope, and I'm assuming, if not all of them, many of them, if they weren't, converted right then. So great point, analogy. I wish I could remember the name, or I'd have kept the video. I'm sure you can probably search it and find it. It's profound.
Very, very. So, Jeff, you get the last question on the main topic, and then we'll do the practical payoff, and you can jet. And if Randy wants to stick around, we'll do a short sit rep after that. When 9/11 2.0 hits, Jeff, and the information environment goes to full noise, what is the single most important thing a prepared American family should do in the first hour to maintain psychological stability and operational clarity beyond being a survival dispatch news guardian and getting SHTF alerts from us that are founded in truth and not a bunch of baloney?
I think you need to react based on what you actually know and not on what you fear. There are going to be, there's going to be horrible things happening, but you've got to remain calm. You've got to say, okay, here's my situation, and this is what I can do to stabilize it, improve it, whatever. It's really critical to not panic, because people will freak out. I go back to the old War of the Worlds radio broadcast in the 30s, where Orson Welles, the Mercury Theater, they were reading H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds, science fiction book, not a new one. It'd been around for a while, but they did a teleplay on it, or a radio play. And even though they broke for commercials during this thing, there were people all over the country, especially in the Northeast where it was allegedly taking place, who thought it was real. And it's like, at some point they needed to step back and go, okay, wait, if alien spaceships were landing and blowing things up, I should be able to, and in New Jersey, and I'm in New Jersey, why can't I look out my window and see some of this? Because it wasn't happening. So you need to get a firm grip on what's real and what's not. And if it's something you cannot influence, impact, or change, don't worry about it right now. Worry about it later. Okay, something's on fire downtown. You're not a fireman. You're not downtown. You're not going to put it out. Don't worry about it. Worry about what's in front of you.
What's the line, Jeff? Give me the courage to accept the things I cannot change and the wisdom to discern them, or something to that effect.
To know the difference.
To know the difference. Yeah.
And I would have this just like, oh, this is happening. Can you change it? No. Then don't lose sleep over it.
Yeah, there was literally people that committed suicide, dude. I wouldn't a bunch, but there was people that committed suicide for that event that Jeff's talking about.
They put their kids in the car and drove for the country.
Let me get it on another stage here. There we go. All right, so we're going to hit the practical payoff. So these are one skill, one item, one mindset shift that y'all can work on in light of the topic that we're covering tonight. So I'm going to go to Randy first. Randy, give me one skill that you recommend people work on or acquire relative to tonight's topic.
Well, I always go back to planning, right? But I'll try to come up with something different, because that's still a skill. Planning is a skill. Some people that can't plan, well, you would understand what I'm saying. That is a skill. But I think that shoot, man, there's so many really at this point. There's quite a few. You need to know how to build stuff or construct stuff, right? Because you may need to harden your house, or you may need to repair some of it if something happens. Or if you're out somewhere else, you may need to build a little hide site. I think that, starting fires, there's multiple ways to start fires. I think you need to learn how to start fires. I think we need to have a skill of learning how to purify water if you need to, even if that's just boiling it. But you're going to need to have water to survive. So that's always going to be a critical skill right there, is acquiring water that you can actually drink.
Yeah, good point. Well said. So, Jeff, tonight you get the item. What's one item that people should acquire in light of this whole PsyWar scenario?
An item they should acquire, I'd probably say a multi-band radio. Because if you're at the location where it happened, okay, say you're in Buffalo and they attack in Buffalo, and it's going to be a mess there. You might you want an ability to get information from other places, other parts of the world, maybe through shortwave or something like that, and that way you can figure out, is this isolated to us? And the internet may go down, the phones may go down. TV stations go off the air. You need to have a way of obtaining information from outside your own area.
Yeah, well said, Jeff. Good job. So for a mindset shift, this is pretty simple. Stop consuming legacy media, as a passive recipient. Start treating it the way that you treat, physical stuff. It's something to be assessed, held, or abandoned. In other words, I pick up this pen, it doesn't write, it's junk, I throw it away. think in those simple types of terms. So if there's no value to it, just abandon it and don't expend any bandwidth, any mental bandwidth on it whatsoever. And again, shameless plug, if you're a Survival Dispatch News Guardian, you get access to all kinds of alerts, SHTF alerts. You get access to our community, over 20 private and secure channels on our Element server. I got to say it, because when we send out emergency notifications, we send them out to half a dozen different means of getting the information to you. And surprisingly, we have more resilience than the National Emergency Broadcast System has. They fail on a regular basis. Just last month, 31 states lost all communication for 24 hours on that stuff. So with that being said, Jeff, I'm assuming you have to go. Randy, do you want to stick with me for a short sit rep?
Yep, I can do that.
All right.
Guys.
Appreciate it. Have a good night, Jeff. Thanks again. Well, you know what that means, Randy. It's that time of night.
Yep.
3, 2, 1. It is time for the Carnival. Hold us on a second. I got the wrong stuff up on stage. The Carnival sit rep. All right, here we go. This new way of doing it, I got to get into it a little bit and make sure that I've got everything all set up. But here we go. Man, I'm dying to hear your thoughts on this one, Randy. Yesterday, Ukraine turned on Slovakia and Hungary. Ukrainian operatives blew up the main node of the Druzhba oil pipeline that supplies 100% of Slovakia's oil and 86% of Hungary's oil. What the heck? Let me play this 25-second video.
Он там тоже горит, что ли? Вон с той стороны. Слева. Возможно. Да, кстати.
I mean, I'm a little rusty on my Slovakian, but I'm pretty sure that was what the fuck in Slovakian.
Well, you know, what I thought when I saw this is, I wonder who's helping them. Is it us? Are we still doing this? Like when they hit some of those harder targets in Russia, those Ukrainians didn't do that by themselves. That's a fact. And you got to wonder why now and why this. I wish I knew, because, it doesn't make any sense. And how is the Ukrainians still doing this when everybody knows they've been beat down to a pulp? I know the media wants to keep acting like they're winning, but Russia, yes, they've done some damage to Russia and they've extended this out, but that's because of all the money and the weapons and everything and all the help we've given them. If we hadn't given them any help, this would have been over probably a couple of years ago, easily. And so it makes me wonder what the hell is really going on and why those attacks are happening. What, who did it, why, and what good is it going to do for us, right? How is this going to benefit the United States? And I know that happened in Ukraine and it's NATO, but trust me, since we're so closely aligned to them, and if anything happens there, it's going to affect us, certainly at this time, and certainly if Russia starts firing off nukes, which at some point you're probably going to.
I gotta give a shout out to our friend Father Duck.
Yes, man. Boom.
He's working in the comment section with people to make sure they've got comms and go bags. This guy he's a guardian angel. I'm telling you right now, he's a guardian angel. Randy, I'm going to give you the floor for a second and just tell the story on Father Duck for those people who don't know about it.
Well, the first thing I'm going to say is I see Saved by Grace. That was you that emailed today, so I will reply back to you. I know that Chris sent an email asking you what you're having, what the problem is with Element. We do need you to answer that, but I'll send an email to you so that I can link you up to Father Duck tonight after we get off the show. That being said, Father Duck, really initially, as you know, he was just a regular on the show. And as we talked about the radios and, we were talking about the packages you put out and the stuff that you have. I'm like, well, most people, including myself, are not going to have the money to do that. And so he sent me a very nice radio and all the setup to put in my truck. He's still working on some other stuff for me in that regard. So there's more to follow there. But he has sent all kinds of stuff to me that, He sent me some of the Carnival packages. What else, man? He has sent a couple of aprons. He sent me some cool 511 stuff, and a couple other things. And what the deal is, he's just here to help because he's got more than he can use, and he's already got a plan that is well in place and being well executed already. So he's taken care of, and he cares about this channel and the followers that we have on here enough that he wants to help anybody that needs help. Now he can't, he's not going to send you $1 million. That would be nice, but he's not Elon Musk in that regard. But, for stuff that you may need when this stuff goes down or whatever, even the next freeze next year, he is more than willing to help you with that. And he does. He sent me pictures they got like 3 storage units full of this stuff. And again, this stuff is what he's going to give away. He's already taken care of. So if you need something, please reach out to us. We'll link you up with him, and he'll be able to help. We'll help facilitate him being able to give you a few things to help you out to get you along the way. And, that's just, which is rare today. Most people aren't going to reach out and help folks. They're going to keep all that stuff themselves, but he's in a place that he's able to do that. So I can't thank him enough. I'm going to owe him forever. And, if he ever needs anything from me, he's got it. All he has to do is ask. I know we're in different states, but you never know, right? You never know. So.
Yeah, appreciate that, Randy. That was so good what you said. I'm going to go back up to the last post, the one I was going to cover. So not the last one I showed, but the next one I was going to show. And I want to fast forward to this one. This is a 2-minute video that speaks to the type of person that Father Duck is. Here's an example of a couple more people who fall into that category. John Rich, famous musician, says, don't let social media twist you into thinking most people are bad and out to get you. Most people are like these guys. These guys are very much like Father Duck. I wasn't going to play the whole thing, but this fits perfectly with the Father Duck theme. This is some good stuff. 2 minutes and 7 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Are you the guy that helped me shovel out my car earlier?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to come by and let you know that I appreciated it, and because I didn't get a chance to stop.
Oh, no, man. It's my pleasure, buddy. Anything I can do to help, man. I really appreciate you coming back up.
Yeah. Are you real busy right now?
No, sir.
Can you come? Can you come to your door?
Yes, sir. I'll be right up.
Okay.
I'm like, dang, he's counting out quite a few there.
Yeah. No, I can't now. I insist. No. I insist. You were busy. You stopped what you were doing, and you came and helped me.
You would have done the same thing.
I would have.
I know you would have.
I would have.
So let's call it. No, we're not doing that, man.
You're a hell of a man.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you so much.
No,
Thank you so much,
dude.
Thank
I
you.
did that out of the kindness of my heart. I'm not looking for anything. I think you would have done the same thing for me.
I most certainly would have.
Absolutely. We'll call
Thank you. Thank you so much. Are you sure?
Oh, 100%.
I hear you dogs. Can I buy you back?
No.
Okay.
I want to help people whenever I can, and if I'm physically able to do that, then I'll do that.
All right. I got you. I'm Anthony.
Anthony,
Yes,
Shane.
sir. Shane.
Bless you.
Pleasure to meet you.
Yes,
Pleasure
sir.
to meet you. I came out here earlier.
I was in
And,
the shower. My
oh.
wife was on
Okay.
They live in Pennsylvania. They're getting a lot of snow too. So
Oh, yeah. They get hit hard up there too.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah. Well, get out the
All
cold.
right, man.
All right. Thanks,
God bless
Shane.
you. Take
God
care.
bless you. Thank
Yes,
you, sir.
sir.
Well, look, and I just want to say that, Father Duck doesn't really want all the credit for this. I mean, he's told me himself, we talk almost daily now. So, he really wants to give the credit to God and all the glory and credit to God, because if it wasn't for God, he wouldn't be in the position he's in to be able to do this. And then God laid it on his heart to do that. So Chris, I know you put it in there, but I know you are super busy. So I'm more than willing. If If y'all want to email Chris, he can link you up with my email, and I will link you up with Father Duck. Or if you want to do it, Chris, more than happy to let you do it. But I know you're busy, so I just wanted to offer that, and then we can facilitate, whatever type of help that he can provide.
Yeah, the easiest thing to do is just email support@survivaldispatch.com. Randy and I will get it. We'll get you in touch with Father Duck. I don't want to set expectations. Like Randy said, he's not Elon Musk. He can't afford to give everybody out there everything. But I played that video because when that guy said, I feel like God has put me in a position to help people, and I want to do that every chance that I get. That's Father Duck in a T. Right?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. So appreciate everything you do, Father Duck. You're a true man of God and a friend of the channel, and we appreciate you very, very much. All right, let's talk Iran, Randy. Matt Tardio says,
You mean Iran?
Iran. Iran has zero intention of agreeing to the USA's demands of stopping uranium enrichment and turning over all of its stockpiles. Iranian media is continuing to pump out threats to the USA via its media outlets. Iran's going down, but it will go down swinging. Final talks begin in a few hours. That was 3 hours ago. So the clock is ticking. What are your thoughts? I don't think Iran's going to back down, Randy. I think we're going to end up going kinetic on them. And I think that once we go kinetic on them, that they're going to activate all of their partners and sleeper cells across the country. That big article that I published down 9/11 2.0 goes into some detail on that. And you got to remember, for the audience, then you can fill in the blanks here, Randy. You have Iran, which is run by the IRGC, not the Ayatollahs. The IRGC, in turn, is in control of Hezbollah. Hezbollah in the Middle East is funded by the IRGC. Hezbollah outside of the Middle East is tasked with funding itself. They have been in bed with the cartels since the early 1990s. Some people even say 1980s. And all of those people now, whether it be Hezbollah terrorists or cartel members, are proxy terrorists / warriors for the IRGC. We would be completely remiss if we did not connect the dots on this and tell you to expect some form of retaliation, which could be hitting major infrastructure pieces. The Golden Gate Bridge comes up time and again in the intelligence. They would love to take something down of that stature and magnitude. Randy, your thoughts on the Iran situation? What's fixing to happen in your mind? And then what happens immediately after that?
Well, I think you're right, because what happened after we hit them just a few months back, right? Do you remember what happened? Immediately, Russia and China kind of stepped in and told them, hey, we got your back, kind of. You know what I mean? So I think that's helping prop them up. I think the Chinese helped them with the nuclear enrichment or uranium enrichment thing, probably gave them some consultation, and who really knows what else. But I think that is why they're going to continue. And then when you look at these evil regimes, and Iran has one, there's no doubt about that. It's no different than China. The problem we would have with trying to fight China now is they will do anything, including nuke the whole rest of the world, to try to preserve the CCP. They will not give up power. They will never, ever fold. They won't ever say we were wrong. Iran's in the same boat. They're in the same boat. And, as we also know, most of Iranian citizens don't even like their government, and they're against it. But, that's what happens when you have a tyrannical government that has all the power. You can't just oust them, or they probably would have by now. So I would say that the reason they're not giving up is, one, because they've had some other actors tell them we got your back and keep up the fight. And again, they're not going to ever admit they were wrong. And these people will never let go of power. It's no different than what we're looking at from for our own people now, right, to a certain degree. And they're going to get to where these Iranian officials are as soon as they get rid of the Constitution and all the rest of our rights. But I think, it looks like we're going to go kinetic. We don't send all that stuff over there, as we mentioned, for no reason. We don't take all of our service members away from their families and send them overseas for no reason, certainly in this type of posture. And so I would assume that we're going to hit them again. And even if we knock out their command and control, what my concern is that's not the only command and control that's in charge of 9/11 2.0. I'm going to suggest, now I have no proof of this, but I'm going to suggest that even if we knocked out their entire command structure and killed every last one of them tonight, and when we wake up in the morning, they're all dead. And, Muslims have to be buried within 24 hours. So they'll all be buried by this time tomorrow night. If that happened, I feel like there's probably a structure here and maybe in Qatar and some other places, but even in our own country that will take command and control over these folks. They didn't just let them in for no reason. And believe me, they knew the kind of people they were bringing in, and they allowed these terrorists and even facilitated them getting into our own country. So that tells me they have somewhat of a command and control structure as well. And I think regardless of what happens next, we're going to see that at some point. Because again, I think, this accountability thing we've been talking about, the question I had, and Jeff's already gone, but, really, I haven't seen any kind of a special prosecution been put into place yet. And I don't know if that's what really has to happen first before we start holding people accountable, or if that was just some bullshit move they always did right before they tried somebody that probably was innocent. And I'm talking about the Democrats, because they seem to set up special, those things right away, like they did on Donald Trump the first time. All of a sudden, boom. And then they wasted $40 million on a hoax that they knew was a hoax. And so I would suspect that we are going to see Iran or somebody at some point after we hit them, because I think we're going to. How do you pull out from this far, right? That's the question we should ask ourselves right now. Now that we're postured over there and the talks are not going well, and believe me, folks, when diplomacy ends, and that's what the talks are, is we're trying to invoke some diplomacy right now. When it fails, the fighting starts. It's just the way it goes. It's always gone that way. It's always going to go that way. So now that we're postured in this position and they're not backing down, how do we pull out? I don't think we can. I don't think it's going to happen. So I guess we're about to see what's about to happen. And I think really it comes down to, Chris, is because there might be some sort of accountability. Look at the amount of CEOs and royalty and government officials around the world that have now had to resign, and see all over, just over the Epstein files. Now, it's not making the news as in headlines, but that is taking place, and there's been a lot of it. So the people in charge see the ball is rolling, and as we know, momentum, what happens, right? And as I've been saying all along, the people that are truly accountable to all this stuff are not going to just let us come up and throw the bracelets on them. They're not going to do that. These are the people that are willing to start World War III or anything else to keep from being held accountable. They fired a missile into the Pentagon to get rid of the records that the $3 trillion or whatever it was that was missing that they were about to have to answer to before September 11th happened. And then once September 11th happened, you never heard about it again, and no one was ever held accountable. So I think really once we start holding people accountable, it will be the most dangerous time that we've ever lived in.
I want to point something out. Jeff has a very different opinion of 9/11 1.0 than Randy and I. And out of the interests of agreeing to disagree, which is a true sign of a friendship, Randy and I don't go down this rabbit hole when Jeff's on, because all it does is cause an argument amongst us that doesn't need to happen. But when Randy said, they basically fired a missile at the Pentagon, we're going to go down that rabbit hole some night when Jeff's not with us. And we've already done a bunch of the legwork, but I do want to mention this. So I ran some numbers last night with Cleed. Randy, listen to this. If 25 American cities get hit, there's 10 sleeper cells in each city. Yep. And each sleeper cell has 4 to 8 sleepers in it, or jihadis. And these are very low numbers, by the way. That converts to somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 jihadis attacking those cities simultaneously. Okay. If the command and control centers need 4 support staff per jihadi, and that number from Cleed is at the very bottom. It's probably double that, but we want the very bottom. Here's how it works out. You have 250 sleeper cells. You have 1,000 to 2,000 jihadis doing the attacks. You have 4,000 to 8,000 support staff here in America that have been facilitating this by, food, accommodation, all of those things for the jihadis. Then you have somewhere between 1,600 and 3,200 people in the command and control centers overseas. That adds up to somewhere between 6,600 and 13,200 total people involved in the attack on 9/11 2.0. It's probably safe to say that the numbers at least double that, but we wanted to go very conservatively. So here's the deal. If we knock out a bunch of the command and control centers in Iran, and if when we get the final AAR on Pakistan and Afghanistan, we discover that Pakistan smoked a bunch of the command and control centers in Afghanistan, that still leaves Syria, number one. Number two, it also leaves Pakistan. And Mumbai 2008, there were 2 command and control centers, and one of them was in Afghanistan, one of them was in Pakistan. So here's the deal, and this is why I've been working on this article for a long time. You have 9/11 2.0 coordinated chaos versus 9/11 2.0 domestic destruction. There's 2 paths, okay? As long as there's enough command and control centers in place, like Randy said, that's what they're going to do, because it inflicts the maximum amount of damage on us, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, all of the above. If, however, we have taken out enough of their command and control, they will pivot to domestic destruction. And what that means is, instead of these jihadis all working in concert together and being orchestrated by command and control centers in the Middle East, they'll just be given orders that it's time to go take out a target. And y'all have been asking for it, and we delivered it in this article today. You wanted us to name cities. You wanted us to name targets. Well, this article does it all. I am unaware of any other article on 9/11 2.0 that is anywhere near as comprehensive and researched as this article is. And you can see the length of it. And I want to take you down to the bottom, because I want you to see a couple things here. Number one, there's an appendix. So Appendix A, as you can see from Khalid, covers the criteria and the cities that are being targeted. Northeast, Mid-Atlantic, Southeast, Gulf Coast, Midwest, Great Lakes, Plains, South Central, Mountain Southwest, West Coast, Pacific Northwest. So all of those cities are listed, number one. Number two, we took all of the intelligence that we had between Khalid and I and put together the domestic destruction target set. And again, if the command and control centers can't coordinate these guys, they're going to tell them go out and hit these high value targets: Golden Gate Bridge, Brooklyn Bridge, George Washington Bridge, Chesapeake Bay Bridge, a couple more bridges, electrical substations, Hoover Dam, Texas oil refineries, nuclear power plants, which I saw there was a conversation in the Guardian's chat today on our Element server, and the lack of security at our nuclear power plants is astonishing. Transmission line substations, all this stuff that feeds into major metros. You've got fuel and logistics nodes, water and wastewater systems, communications, and other pressure points. This is the list of supporting open source intel and documentation on this. So all you have to do is go to survivaldispatch.news. And when we're not broadcasting, you won't see the video here. You'll see the sit rep for tonight. But the very first article that was published this morning is right here. 9/11 2.0 is taking shape. If you want the lowdown on 9/11 2.0, that's your article. It'll answer all of your questions, I promise. So, Randy, I want to do a couple things. I want to close out with on a high note for people so that it's not all doom scrolling. This video is 2 minutes and 51 seconds long. I'm not playing the whole video. I'm going to play a section of it just for our friend Guardian, JCF. I can't tell you any other details other than that because they really like this video, and so do I. And it's just kind of a cool thing. And then I've got one more funny video that's very short, and then we'll put a lid on this thing. But this guy here, hats off to this guy. This is freaking awesome.
Yo, I want a mashup of all America songs.
Freedom! Okay. Here we go. Oh, she was an American girl, raised on promises. It's a high school prom, it's a Springsteen song, it's a ride in a Chevrolet. Oh, beautiful for space, just got forever waves of grain. God bless America, land that I love. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. We're an American band. Yeah, we're an American band. I thank God for my life. And for the stars and stripes, make freedom forever fly. Let it ring. Take me on a trip I'd like to go someday. Take me to New York, I'd love to see LA. This is still the place that we all call home. Bye, bye, Miss American Pie. Drove a Chevy to the levee, but the levee let freedom ring.
This guy did just an amazing job. I mean, it's one of those things that popped up on my feed, and I thought, holy shit, that is just badass. So I'm throwing the link right now into the live chat everywhere except for our small commie tube channel that got shut down by the communist bastards at YouTube. All right, moving on from there to the next one, and then again we'll put a wrap on this. This is friggin' hilarious. This is probably AI. Doesn't matter. It's hilarious. If you can't read what it says in the middle of the screen, it says, "She died, bro." Anti-commie says, "I hope she's okay." It's 10 seconds. Here's her.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I got.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, she.
That's pretty cool.
That poor girl, once she got all her weight moving one direction, there was no stopping her.
So, I mean, we're not going to hell or anything for laughing at that, are we, Randy?
I know. Well, you know, it is funny. I hate to say it, it is funny, but you know,
oh my God,
we're not shaming her. That's the first video. I thought, man, the guy's got a great voice. He needs to at least go into announcing. He could sing, but man, there's so many singers out there. You have to get extremely lucky to make any money, but he could definitely do some type of announcing. He's got a great voice.
Well, the friggin' lyrics too were
awesome. Oh yeah, you ain't gonna catch me singing out loud like that on a video. Well, hell no. Y'all don't even want to hear that either.
Fantastic stuff.
I'll have to go back and listen to it all. I thought, man, because I was trying to think, and it's hard to think of all the songs now that he might have put in there, but he covered some really good ones.
Oh,
way back to new.
The whole video is fantastic. Yeah. Hats off to that young man. What a great job. What a great patriot. Yeah. So final shout out to our friends at Carnival. They've got brand new subscription packages. They've simplified. They've dialed their prices in. So you can get the off-grid subscription for $99 a month, bug out subscription for $149 a month, or the SHTF subscription for $499. When you sign up for a subscription from them, I will give you $100 a year Guardians membership completely free in concert with it. And here's the thing, lock in the price for 12 months, 49% inflation last year on beef alone. That's how you lock in your price. So whether you want to eat it as you receive it or stack it up in your pantry as a prepper, I'm telling you, you can't beat it with a dang stick. And our friends at Wasatch Wagyu are in on the game now too. They've got some subscriptions, $39, $59, $99 a month for the best dang jerky in the entire world. Discount code SD25. Nobody has that discount but Survival Dispatch. 25% off everything but the subscriptions. What a kick-ass way. I mean, I'll tell you what, like all three of those pictures, Randy.
Yep.
Yeah, I can wipe that out inside 24 hours.
Oh, yeah. Man, it's hard to stop eating it.
It's like freaking crack cocaine, man.
Yeah.
But anyways, that aside, Appreciate your time, Randy. And we'll be back tomorrow evening, usual time, 7 p.m. Eastern, with the next episode in our Long War series, Captured Institutions, the slow takeover of power structures. I want to thank everybody out there who supports Survival Dispatch, especially our Guardians and our new SDN Intel Alert subscribers. We cut the price in half for the SDN Intel Alerts because some people just said, look, I don't have time to be in that element community that there's like 15,000 messages a week in all the channels, but I need the SDN's Alert, Survival Dispatch Emergency Notification System, and I need the daily Intel Alert, which I send out to all of our paying Guardians, which is a compressed version of the podcast that we're doing that night, but it has all the links and the important stuff. So if you go to survivaldispatch.news, click membership up top, you can sign up either for the Guardians, $9.99 a month or $99.99 a year, or you can sign up just for the Intel Alerts, $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year. And I think we got it dialed in now, Randy, as far as the specific things that the two groups want. I get it, man. I can't keep up with the element conversations myself. Yeah. And I work extreme hours. So anyway, I appreciate all of our Guardians very, very much. Can't tell you how much I appreciate our sponsors, especially Carnivalt and Wasatch Wagyu. These are 100% American companies with 100% American products. It's Greg's own beef. It's his Wagyu, herd that he makes this stuff from. And the guys over at Carnivalt, you know what they're like, Randy. If it ain't American, they ain't doing it. That's the bags, the O2 absorbers, the meat, no shenanigans.
Why? Because they're real Americans. That's why.
Real Americans, TM Randy Nance.
That's right.
You have to pay yourself a royalty every time you say that, by the way.
And I got one more announcement, if I can. I just wanted to say, if I'm just asked for prayers. My fiance had surgery this morning. We're hoping it's the last one for a while, but we'll see. She's in a lot of pain and she's very sick right now. So I just ask for any prayers, you guys. I would greatly appreciate that, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Randy. Somebody said shenanigans. Yeah, shenanigans. Like
buddy.
like putting Carnivalt don't put mRNA. They don't use any cows that have mRNA injected into them. Yeah. They don't use any cows that have been grain fed. They're all grass finished, which means grass fed and grass finished. They have no histamines. They have no antibiotics. So not only is it 100% American, there's no shenanigans because there's none of that other crap that's poisoning the rest of our food system.
That's right.
So Carnivalt.com, WasatchWagyu.com. I'm telling you, can't beat either one of them with a stick. But do me a favor, y'all, between tonight and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless our law enforcement agents, officers. God bless our troops. God bless America.
God bless America.
Enjoy the closing video. It is a brand new one dedicated to Mr. Randy Nance.